educational partnership. Educational partnership can be done with school, colleges, or universities. To enhance the academic achievement, student learning, and talk about the quality-based education, we collaborate with these institutes. The main aim to ensure the quality-based education. Educational partnership as a form of communication, cooperation, and collaboration in child support in the educational process gives options, decisions, and educational activities among educational factors. By the cooperation, educational partnership with educational agencies or any educational institutions, every member moves towards growth. And collaboration is an educational partnership is a top priority, which aimed to increase the quality of education. Collaboration between school, community, and with any other agencies require effective communication, a unit of requirements and actions in the child's interest. Partners can include anyone who is interested in enriching educational experiences for students, teachers, schools, and the community. To encourage lifelong learning among students, the center has three main goals. The first one is generating, analyzing, and sharing successful collaboration strategies. Second, to improve the instruction of instructors and educator training projects to encourage more community involvement. And the last but not the least, leading exploration on local area organizations and best practices. Wikipedia partnership in education is a great opportunity to teach students. It is essential in 21st century skills that most will use in their careers and personal lives. Wikipedia is a valuable public resource, and in the classroom environment, students learn how to contribute to it and how to use it properly. Educators can use Wikipedia help students to learn how to conduct research and distinguish fact from fiction. Wikipedia is the most visited website in the world with more than 40 million articles accessed every month. Wikimedia Foundation helps teachers, students of all ages to assess and use the full potential of Wikimedia projects for their learning objectives. The key pillars are promoting knowledge, equity, teaching 21st century skills, and reading Wikipedia in the classroom. Reading Wikipedia is the most effective project from all the projects of Wikipedia, where we organize training programs, workshops, seminars, and conferences. And in this curriculum, we talk about the teacher training program, which help both educators and students to develop vital media and information literacy skills for the 21st century. It includes how the information is produced, how to assess and evaluate the content available freely online, and how to understand biases and knowledge gaps in the information they consume. In the curriculum, there are three modules. In the module one, we learn how to assess information on the internet. We learn about what is Wiki and what is Wikipedia, what are the common misconceptions about Wikipedia, why we use Wikipedia, who writes Wikipedia and who does not write Wikipedia, how to navigate Wikipedia, the other ways to assess Wikipedia, and keeping students safe while reading Wikipedia. And in the last, we learn about the knowledge equity, content diversity, and Wikipedia. In the next module, module 2, we'll learn how to evaluate information. How to evaluate information about Wikipedia. We learn about the Wikipedia pillars, Wikipedia guidelines, Wikipedia core content policies, overview of Wikipedia article structure, talk pages, and other communication spaces on Wikipedia. We learn about the view history and the process of knowledge creation, references and verifiability, evaluating of Wikipedia articles, and facilitating access to quality academic sources to Wikipedia. And in the last module, we learn how to create information. We learn growth mindset, how to create a user page on Wikipedia, your first contribution, how Wikipedia editors organize contributions, and transformative practices for building community knowledge. Next, who benefits from partnership with Wikipedia? Everyone have benefits, but the most student, teachers, and administrators can take benefit from Wikipedia. Students benefit from Wikipedia. They learn about the basics of copyright and free licensing, the importance of attributions. They develop their critical thinking. How students take help of Wikipedia in their class assignments or curriculum content that helps to think in a new way. They become a producer of knowledge. And they learn the online etiquette. Students learn how to work with people whom they only know online and they never meet in person. This is an essential skill in today's online environment. Students participate in a large scale knowledge projects and encounter challenges that are unique to an online environment. So they become online citizenship. Students work with other people to develop high quality encyclopedia. Their collaboration skills are developed. Their basic reading and writing skills are developed. They read a lot while working on Wikipedia. So students get better at reading by reading more and practice writing in an expository encyclopedia and a summary style. Their self-confidence is built and their community relationship will build. Next, the teachers benefit from Wikipedia. Teachers can develop their teaching skills by using Wikipedia as a teaching and learning tool. Their relationship with the students can be better. With the help of Wikipedia, they can update their knowledge and their teaching experience will become positive. Their collaboration skills will develop. And
Hi everyone. Welcome to the session on Wiki Loves Monuments. I'm Krishna. I'm based in India. I'm talking to you on behalf of the international team of Wiki Loves Monuments today. Some of you might have heard of Wiki Loves Monuments. Some of you might have participated in it. Some of you might have involved in some form of organizing. Uh, this presentation is mainly oriented towards new teams or new countries that would like to set up and participate in Wikilove's monuments on behalf of the country. But it will also be helpful for anyone who is interested in Wikilove's monuments in general, how the campaign works, why we are doing what we're doing, and the overall setup of it. So let's get started. So one of the missions of the, like, not one of the missions, but one of the primary missions is that we help to document all the built cultural heritage, all the knowledge on wikis, which is parallel to the overall mission of the Wikimedia movement, which is that everyone can feel sharing some of all knowledge. Whereas we have a specific mission, which is that all built cultural heritage is documented on Wikimedia Commons or any other projects in any other form that is possible. So how do we do it? We have a photo competition, which is annual, global, federated, and low barrier. So what do these mean? It's annual. So we have the campaign running for the past 10 years. It's been over a decade since it started. It happens every year annually in September and October. Sometimes we keep changing the campaign months due to different global events, such as the pandemic, for example. And it's global. All countries are welcome to take part in the campaign. If you have a team, there is no. All countries are. They can set up their own campaigns and run Wikilove's monuments in their countries. It is federated. By federated, we mean that we have an international team which will talk more about the structure, but which we only set the broad framework and make sure things are running and keep everything coordinated. But the core part of the campaign, which is running the campaigns nationally and getting the uploads and getting the winners at national levels, that is done by national teams. And national teams are very free and flexible to have their own adjustments to the the way they want to design things, the way they want to run the campaign, do the outreach. It's all up to the national teams. So that makes it a very federated and a distributed model. And it's low barrier because just imagine uploading. Wikilove's Monuments is proven to be very friendly for newcomers who have not contributed previously to Wikilove's Wikimedia projects at all. So uploading a photograph is fairly easy than, for example, writing a whole article. And because we have a lot of things auto-filled with the help of lists of monuments, it becomes a fairly easy and low barrier entry point into Wikimedia projects for newcomers. And of course, it's a photo competition that makes it fun, and that helps to attract a lot of newcomers. So we have this whole campaign set up, and so why are we doing this? Of course, we have the main mission, which is, of course, we want to document all the built cultural heritage, and then increase contributions into Wikimedia projects such as Wikimedia Commons, primarily Wikimedia Commons because it's a photo competition, but a lot of people, they come to Wikimedia Commons, they upload the photographs, they get started with their contributions, but also migrate to other projects such as Wikipedia or Wikidata if they're interested in. And keep engaging the local Wikimedia communities. This happens through outreach. So whenever a country organizes Wikilove's monuments, they do a lot of activities such as photo walks, workshops, which help in turn to keep the communities engaged and enhance them. So as I've mentioned, it's a federated model. We have several countries taking part every year. This, like in the past few years, is somewhere between 40 to 50. We're trying to improve this count in this year and the next few years. So the first year it was only one country, and then it was Europe, and then it went international from late 2012. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that all countries, for example, if you participate this year, that you have to participate again. It is up to the bandwidth of the national teams if they want to do it a certain year or not. Some countries do it every year, some alternate, some do it whenever they have the necessary bandwidth to organize the campaign. And a quick overview of the uploaders and newcomers we have. So the blue lines are the total uploaders, and the red ones are the newcomers of them. And I was mentioning before, it's a low barrier competition, and this definitely proves that it's low barrier because we have almost 60 to 70% of all our participants newcomers. We might have anywhere between 8 to 10, 15,000 of uploaders, and at least 60-70% of them are newcomers. So this was very interesting and exciting about Wikileaks monuments. So that's a broad overview of what it is and how things are. And like, so how does this work? In the setup of it. So we have the national organizers who do the, I would say, the core work of the campaign globally. Of course, they directly interact with the participants at national level, and with the support of the national teams, national entities such as like maybe some NGOs or cultural organizations, which help to promote different teams have different partnerships with different entities such as UNESCO, other European, other cultural organizations at international and national level. And then we have us international team. So we'll talk more about the responsibilities of the international team, and the national teams. But what we try to do is set a broad framework that everyone can function within and have a fair participation among all countries. But it's quite flexible, and we'll see more of that. So how do we share responsibilities? What does the international team do, and what do you, like if you're signing up to be a national organizer, what responsibilities do you have? So the international team sets the overall framework. By overall framework, it means when the campaign runs. Like for example, this year it's September and October. Before that it was just September, and during the pandemic we thought it's good to have some flexibility because the situation of the pandemic situation is different in different countries, and organizers would like that flexibility to choose a month that's most suitable for them. Supporting and onboarding new teams if there are any issues with technical, non-technical, and helping new teams to set up campaigns. And we also do the development of Montage, which is the photo jury tool, which is used by Wikileaks Monuments, but also many other photo campaigns. And then the central notices, which are the primary means of outreach for the campaign. And of course, the main work with the international jury and winners, then announcing the international winners. So that's what we sort of the broad, the global structures that help national teams and other entities to smoothly run their campaigns. So the national teams just set up things on common, such as the landing page and lists of monuments. You could also Wikidata if you have the bandwidth, and outreach at national level, securing funding for national prizes, and the national jury and the winners. So that's how the roles and responsibilities are. And this might be flexible. Like some national teams can also help with some of the international tasks. And if you're interested, you can always join the international team. So that's broadly the responsibilities. Coming to the timeline, we have this. Right now, we are in a preparation phase with setting up different things, getting the required funding, and all those things. Some things happened prior to this, but this was where most of the preparation happens. And during September to October, we have the national competitions. Some different countries do it a different way. And then we have the international jury submission deadline, which is 5th December. This is how the federated model works. So the national teams have their own national juries, get the top 10 national winners. So that if there are 40 countries participating in the year, we have 10 from each. So 4 running majors are taken into the international jury, of which, again, then we run the international jury and the international winners. Suppose that more of the logistics of the prize distribution and reporting and all the things. So that's broadly the timeline of how it looks. So now, let's see how if you're a new team or a new country that wants to participate, let's see how you can get started. So one of the first things that you'll need is a team. You need a team of at least 3 people to keep things running smoothly. Sometimes we have instances where there's one member or there are 2 people, but it's good to have 3 so that the burden is not too much on 1 or 2 of the organizers. So you can share the responsibilities. Someone is coordinating the work at large, and then someone for outreach and doing setting up things on commons, and one person to coordinate the jury. Those are the three broad areas. You could have more things like, but since you're getting started, these are some of the basics. And again, I want to stress that these are the basics that are required to set up, but you can always do more. And yeah, it's limitless of what you can do in terms of outreach or other things that you want to experiment with. Some of the basic pages that are required on Commons are the landing page. That's where whenever you have the central notice banners running across Wikimedia projects, whenever user clicks that, they'll land on your page. Again, we have some suggested designs for the landing page, but you're free to experiment and design your own landing pages. Set up the basic category structure to gather the images, do some maintenance if necessary, and provide translations for the center notice banner and the upload wizard if it's not in English. And if you have other primary language in your country, you can provide translations for that. And then we have we were talking about Wikilove's monuments being low barrier, and one of the primary reasons why it's low barrier is, of course, it's photo uploading is easy, but we also make it more easier by having lists of monuments where participant can directly click on one of the monument and upload a picture, and all the details will be auto-filled in the wizard. So it offsets a lot of work of like entering details manually, so that helps newcomers make this more exciting. If you don't have a list already, some of the sources you could look for is you could look for if your government, most of the governments have a cultural heritage department. Also, you can look up on their site if they have a list of monuments for your country. It can also be some other non-governmental organizations, such as Europeana might have some lists. Any like other countries, other organizations in your country which might publish this. It can also be some sort of trustworthy source. It can be a news agency that publishes lists, some researcher who publishes these lists. So it can be any source, any curated source, that is fine. And you can take those lists and put them on Wikimedia Commons, and we can also help you with putting that setup. And then there's a timeline. There's not much work to do here, but there's a small decision that you need to take whether you want to organize the campaign in September or October. That's totally fine, but just try to remember that you can only have 30 days in either of those months, whether you choose September or October. And once you do that, accordingly, you can run the jury and submit the winners by 5th of December. So the jury, for the jury, it is important to have at least 3 jurors, and it is mandatory to have 3 jurors because one person, it can be biased. The results can be biased if it's just one person, but 2 people, it's hard to break vote if there's a tie. And so 3 is a good number to start with. You can always have more, but 3 is minimum. You can use the montage tool, which is used. It has a fairly simple user interface where you can vote on an image and tally all the results at the end to find the top winning images. And you can have 3 to 5 rounds, some initial filtering, more detailed voting, and the final top winning. And you can have more runs if you have more images. So that's broadly the jury. The international team also helps with setting up the montage for the campaigns every year. And of course, once the jury is over, you will come to the prizes. You're free. Again, this is up to the national teams to choose how many they want to give the prizes. It can be 1 to 5 or 10, or maybe other different like special categories. You can choose that. The funding of the prizes and also other outreach activities you might have, you can do microgrants, which is by the international team. It's fairly simple. If your budget is low and you want to have a lightweight process, you can do microgrants. You can apply for a microgrant from the international team. But if you have more budget or more prizes or outreach activities that won't fit this budget, you can always apply to the Wikimedia Foundation's rapid funds. There might also be, these are the 2 mainstream like primary sources, but you can also try with other affiliates if they are in your region, if they already have annual plan and they're able to do some funding to your activities. And finally, those are the five steps that are basics of required to keep things running. But you can also do more outreach. For central notice banners are they're by default they're run by the teams. But you can also do social media promotions, have paid promotions, and have a budget for it. You can also do activities such as photo walks. You might have heard of it. The group of people gather, they just go around the city, photograph things, and upload them to Wikilove's monuments and Wikimedia Commons as part of Wikilove's monuments. And you can also do workshops for newcomers. So this is just some initial ideas. Again, you can always do more and have more ideas if you always welcome to try it out. And you can also always reach out to international team or other national organizers if you need any support or help with this thing setup. So just to recap, if you're a new team, new country, these are the basics that you need to cover up. Team, have a list of monuments, decide on the timeline, or gather a jury, see how much you want to give the prizes, and secure funding for them, and then do the necessary outreach to increase participation. We'll take questions at the end. Like we have a slot at the end to take questions. Yeah. So these are, and thank you very much for attending the session. And yeah, you can always reach out to these through these channels if you want to contact the international team here. You can also post on the public list where you'll also have other national organizers who would be happy to help and share their ideas with you. And these are our social media channels if you want to follow. Yeah, that's it about Wikilove's monuments, just the basics. And we also have a session, just to remind you if you would be interested, we also have a session about improving diversity, equity, and inclusion in Wikilove's monuments, and also other photographic campaigns, which is the research that we facilitated last year with the help of an external researcher. It's happening on 14th August from 8:15 to 8:50 UTC. You can see it on the Wikimania program as well if you're interested in that. Great. Thank you, and we can take any questions we have.
Thank you. Thank you for watching our video. I would have actually expected Krishna to be here with me. I'm Sil. I'm a Wikimedian from the Netherlands and on the international team since last year. Krishna apparently has some troubles with joining us today, but he'll be... There he is. Yes, we can. Krishna? Yes, you are. We can hear you. There's a question that was raised during the video. What are some monuments that are most exciting to you? Could you share something on the topic?
I don't have one monument that's most exciting. I mean, some of the monuments that I like in India are, for example, the Red Fort, and I like forts mostly because there's, I think, a lot to explore in forts. So yeah, I think that the category of forts is what I like the most. But I think that's more of a personal.
Thanks. So for me, actually, in Wikilove's monuments, it's not specifically the monument, but it is about movement in the image, and it's how an image or a monument is still used or not used, maybe even. So in its environment, to see all the surroundings, what is it now? What does it mean to the people living there? Yeah.
So this, Phil, you might also be able to answer this better, but I think this depends on the country and the number of images that you might receive. So generally, we have 3 to 5 rounds. The first rounds we have more time because we might have to filter out a lot of images. Like the more the more advanced rounds that you go to, the time commitment may be less. So I think anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a week for like a couple of months. I think that's average commitment. And again, this depends on the number of images that you might receive for your country.
I think you're very much correct. It also depends if you use the jury tool of montage that was actually mentioned by Lodewijk, even iets anders in the chat. There are different tools out there, and you can do it old-fashioned way and just collecting them in a category that the jury will go through. But the jury has time until the 5th of December this year to come to that final top 10 that will be given to the Wiki Lost Monuments International Jury. So it depends. The same question for the local team. What is expected time investment for a local team? What is your experience in that, Krishna?
Get the campaign running. I think if you have again a team of 3 to 5 like organizers in your country, and that anywhere between 5 hours to 10 hours, 5 to 8 hours a week, and this might spike in some, like if it's the peak hours of the peak weeks of the campaign, it can go as high as 10 hours per week. But it's generally, if you have, like that's what I was mentioning also in the presentation, if you have at least 3 to 5 members, especially if you're a new country that is participating or a new team, you could share that burden with different organizers. So yeah, and I would say anywhere between 3, 5, and 8, depending on the time of the campaign and how many members do you have on your team.
Yeah, I can agree. And also, it depends. The first year, you might want to take some more time because in the next years, you'll have all that work already prepared. You'll have the lists on either Wikipedia or Wikidata. So everything is available for you already. That first year, it might take some more time. But we're happy, as the international team, we're happy to help you. And as long as you have volunteers and you have a nice team and you can work together, we can make this work. Ah, Krishna, again, a very nice question, I think. Do the sources for the monument list, do they have to be published? Or could it be just a Google Drive document that people use as a source for their lists of monuments?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think that always comes up, and there's also another question. I'm seeing it on the Etherpad about if we should only use government sources or if we can use more sources. So it doesn't necessarily need to be government sources always. You could use a combination of the government sources, and maybe if there's an NGO which publishes a heritage organization which verifies the monuments and they publish a curated list, those can also be used. Or if it's also a trustworthy, if it's a trustworthy source or something such as. But yeah, you just need to make sure that there's no overlap, or also make sure that the lists are not biased to a certain group of monuments. Sometimes we see in some countries this issue of certain lists are biased towards certain colonial monuments or other groups, XYZ things. If if it can also be a Google Drive document, I don't have like a perfect answer for that. It's if you, I mean, we don't suggest that you curate that list because you might miss on some monuments, and it's hard to verify what's the monument and what's not. Maybe you can, yeah, it's good to have if it's a published source and if it's more like a peer-reviewed source that's being used.
Yeah, but the list itself does not have to be published online somewhere else, as long as you have the list that is by some official organization. It's okay, right?
Yeah, yeah. As long as it's from like official. I mean, we can be flexible with what's official. It can be a organization, it can be a government organization. Yeah, but it's some sort of peer, like it's reviewed by someone and who verifies that these are monuments.
Yeah. Okay. Question from about the chapters and organizing Wikilost monuments. If there is a chapter in your country, do they have to be there when you, as a volunteer, as a Wikimedia volunteer, decide you want to organize Wikilost monuments? Or can you just organize Wikilost monuments with a group of friends, other Wikimedians from your country?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. It doesn't necessarily need to be the chapter or the official affiliate always. If I mean, if they are interested to organize, that's great. But it can also be other volunteers who are organizing, and they can also seek support from the chapter if the chapter is not, if the chapter or the affiliate is not ready to take up the full lead on the campaign. It's just like it's. I think it would be good to just make sure that they're informed and they don't have any like don't be causing any conflicts there. So yeah, if they're happy, if they're not taking up the campaign this year, I think other volunteers can always run the campaign.
Yeah, I agree. Chapters have a lot to do, and if your local chapter is does not have the bandwidth to support you, and you think this is very important, then please just go ahead and organize Wikilost monuments. I think, yeah. Do we have documentation about what is needed from a national organizer to organize Wikilost monuments? Do we have any materials that people can use for support in helping organize Wikilost monuments?
There is a link on Commons where like it has some basic information such as where to get the landing page, where to put up the translations for upload wizard and the central notice. I don't have the link handy right now, but I'll share on chat before the session ends.
I have it open.
Great, then you can share it.
Yep. This is the link Krishna was talking about. Indeed, there are a few red links yet, but also as an international team, we're still getting organized and getting ready for the new year. But at least this basic page, and it's almost the same as the 2021 page. There are not a lot of differences that we have for 2022 in comparison to last year. A question that might be more difficult to answer is what are the steps to improve the integration of Wikilost monuments and Wikidata, sorry.
I don't. I'm afraid I'm not the best person to answer that. But if someone is interested, maybe we can connect with whoever is currently working on in that area.
Yeah, so Wikimedia Sweden is working on Wikilost monuments and Wikidata, and I am hoping there will be more information about that before we start on the 1st of September. Remember, Wikimania, Lost Monuments runs from the 1st of September until the 31st of October, and you're free to choose whichever 30 to 31 days within that time period suits your competition, your national competition, the best. So there is leeway in that planning, in that time. Who can apply for the grants?
So, I spoke about a couple of types of, like, a couple of sources of sources where you can apply for a grant. One is with the Wikilost Monuments International team. If you're the team that is organizing Wikilost Monuments in your country, and if your request is below $500, then you're eligible for to get a micro grant with us. If you're going for a Wikimedia Foundation grant, they have their own guidelines with related to grants, and if you have any previous record of like if you're received in the previous funds. Uh, but I think the basic ones are you need to be a team which is organizing Wikilost monuments, and be in community good standing that is not blocked anywhere or have some sort of bans, and I think also not any outstanding reports with the previous grants that you have taken from Wikimedia Foundation.
I think that is correct. Is the criteria of monument age still used this year? I don't don't recall us having a criteria for monument age, do we?
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
Is
I mean, I don't remember having used such a guideline.
No, I think we don't look at how old the monument is, as long as it's recognized as a monument by an official organization. You're okay. They're suitable monuments to be photographed for the competition. Do we have any more questions?
I think there is one. When we have monuments on National Heritage List, one is built, one and isn't our both eligible for international judging. I don't completely. The latest one from do you see any more questions?
I don't. I see the chat is still ongoing, so I'm just gonna, maybe we can pause for a bit, and because we still have 4 minutes according to my counter in Feedloop. So maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the 2 minute lag that we have with Feedloop and YouTube, we might want to come to a close because I think we will both be around Wikimania in several sessions. There's also going to be the diversity, equity, and inclusion session on Sunday morning, talking about inclusion in Wikilost monuments and also other photo competitions. And I think we'll be around for more questions and more answers, right, Krishna?
Yes, yeah, I'm around, and I'm also yeah. I'll also quickly share the contact email for if you want to reach out to the team for anything.
Yep. Okay. I think that's it from our side. Thanks a lot. Have a good Wikimania, everyone.
Thank you. See you.
On air. Good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to wherever you are. Today, we will be speaking about fiscal sponsorships. So, a quick word of house maintenance before we get actually started. Um, I'm Stefan. This is my face. I will switch quickly to a screen share, and I'm told them directly into the chat so I can see them fairly quickly. Otherwise, we have a chance that there'll be a rather how could I say awkward moment between the moment I finish my speech and the moment I can read your questions and access them. So as soon as something crosses your mind, please type in the chat. And now we'll get ready to start. So you are Wikimedians, I expect, and welcome to Wikimania. I hope you're enjoying the few talks you've had already and looking forward to the next few ones. There's a very cool one after me, I know. Um, and I'll introduce myself. I'm the other Kiwix guy, which means I'm the guy that doesn't code at Kiwix, because Kiwix is a piece of software that allows people to access Wikipedia when there's no internet access. Also, more things than Wikipedia, but you know, every single Wikipedia, but also Wikiquote, Wikiversity, all the Wikimedia projects. Actually, we copy them and we package them so that they can be like highly compressed, and you can actually store the whole thing onto your cell phone, no matter what they are, be it like Wikipedia in Hindi, Wikipedia in Arabic, in French, in English, it does not matter. We are based in Switzerland, which is slightly useful for the rest of my talk. And if you have any question, because I speak too fast or because maybe some things were not clear enough, feel free to ask in the chat or send me an email to stefan@kiwix.org. Also, contact@kiwix.org works, or hello@kiwix.org. If you want to find me, you will find me. All right. So, what are fiscal sponsorships? This is what we're going to see. We see what they are, what they can do for you, how what you can bring to the table to make it work, like what is it that you need or what that you need to do to get it done, and what does not work, like what are the cases where you probably don't want to get into a fiscal sponsorship because that wouldn't work with the foundation. So a fiscal sponsorship, according to Wikipedia, it's the practice of a nonprofit organization such as Kiwix to offer their legal and tax exempt status to people or to groups that are running a project somewhere and that need to receive a grant. Basically, what this means is that we provide admin support. So you do your project, and we do the registrations, we do the payments essentially. And in most places where we've been working with people needing fiscal sponsorship, it's because if you receive money from a nonprofit, then that money needs to be received from another nonprofit. So we save you the trouble of trying to register your own little, your own specific project, because in some countries that's a bit too much effort for just like running editathons or things like this, or photo workshops. So you just give Kiwix address and everyone's happy. But concretely, how does it work really? Okay, so let's say you have a great idea. You want to run a series of editathons around your country, but you need money to pay for the trips, the food, the actual rooms, maybe some internet connection, and you ask a grant to the WMF. You can actually ask a grant from anyone. It's not just WMF, but again, this is Wikimania, so we suspect that you'll be asking the Wikimedia Foundation. You make your proposal on Meta, and it's very clear, and you have a budget, and it says, okay, I need this and that, and I will get this and that. And I have a fiscal sponsor, which is Kiwix. And then Wikimedia looks at it, and they'll be like, okay, it sounds like a good project. We will fund the grant, and we will send the money to Kiwix. So the money arrives in Switzerland, and you, in your country, wherever you are in the world, you run your project. So you rent the rooms, you call people, you make some noise, hey, come and edit Wikipedia. And then, of course, comes the time where you need to pay those bills. So either you need to be reimbursed for your travels, or you need to pay for the rooms that you rented, or maybe you bought a computer, or maybe if it's a very large project, actually there's staff salary that is involved. As in, like, every month you get a little something for the work you done, or big something, depends. Then that's when Kiwix comes to play. We pay those bills. or we reimburse you if it's travel. Like you send us a copy, you take a picture of your train ticket, and then we reimburse you for the price of a train ticket. And we send the money directly to your account, and there's no more paperwork than this to do. The only paperwork is here, and I took a very clear example. So let's say we have the North Pole Wiki user group running editathons in the North Pole, and Santa Claus is actually the owner of the project, but it could be Santa Claus and 10 of his team. I don't care. We would have 10 people reimburse, it's no problem, the whole team. So Santa Claus is running his editathon, and he wanted to bring some goodies for the kids. Also, the food for the reindeers that he had to bring his material, and obviously is renting a factory to build all those nice little presents for the kids and run the editathon. So the presents for the kids he bought in Angola, I think, and he paid in Kwanzaa. I'm just giving different currencies to tell you that it's no problem. We've seen quite a few people living in one country, but then buying something off Amazon or Facebook, and then they pay in US dollars, even though in their own country, I mean, everyone's got their own currency. It doesn't really matter because you pay in Kwanzaa, in Aruban florin, on yuan renminbi or US dollars. You just put the conversion rate, and at the end of the day, if you want to be paid in US dollars or euros or whatever, then it will be translated into the same amount. So Santa Claus made his thing, and or he directly sent us the bill for the rental of the room. It really depends. And then we will pay those $1,705 to his account, and then Santa Claus is done. He's run his project. He can do the metrics for the Wikimedia Foundation, but there's no other paperwork that is needed from him. Basically, the whole purpose of this paper is just to make a list of the money he will get back and his bank account number so we can send it to him. That's about it. So as I said, minimal paperwork, no registration needed with the government because Kiwix does it and we're certified and a non-profit. The Wikimedia Foundation covers the cost associated with the fiscal sponsorship. So you just add 10% at the end of what you need, and that's the standard thing, and they don't care anymore. And we actually also pay for staff salaries. And as you can see, I put a little asterisk next to it because if you are, as part of your project, considered as an employee of the project, well, you still need to pay taxes in your country. So you need to take part of that. Of that part of the admin. But otherwise, anything else, payments is being managed by us. And that's when I remind you that if you have questions, you should put them in the chat because between the moment I'm speaking right now and the moment you will hear me, there's 1 or 2 minutes, and we're not too far from the end of the presentation already because as you see, it's pretty simple. The only thing I need to discuss is the but. There's always a catch. So there's always a but. And what are the situations where fiscal sponsorships won't work? There's actually two, really, and I would say even just one. The main reason why you shouldn't go into a fiscal sponsorship is whether you, but most likely your country, is under some sort of restrictions. So luckily, there aren't too many like this, mostly like North Korea, Russia, Iran. When I say you, if you're a listed terrorist, we probably cannot send you money, but I don't expect this to happen. You never know. I mean, lots of Wikimedians, but I expect not. And that's about it. I also listed, so we cannot send money from wherever, and particularly not the Wikimedia Foundation. They're specifically strict. They're actually stricter than us Kiwix being in Switzerland because they are Americans, and it is what it is. And they cannot send even indirectly money to countries with whom the US government has a beef. The only other reason where there could be an issue is if you need to plan on buying online vouchers and you need to use a credit card. If you don't have a credit card, we cannot use our own credit card because we found out the hard way that in many countries it doesn't work. Like, I'll give you a concrete example. Someone was based in Bangladesh and he said, okay, I'm going to send vouchers to local Amazon India. So there was Amazon, which is a global company. But Amazon India doesn't accept credit cards that are not from the country, that are not from Indian citizens. So we had to work something out with people we knew and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it was just too much effort. So the way we'll bypass that problem is that you find someone with a credit card and we will pay them back. but that's the only thing. You cannot use our credit card. But otherwise, if we need to pay, I don't know, a website designer because you had a new website, you send us the bill and we pay that person directly. No problem. So just don't be in a country that manufactures bombs and send them to America. That's the bottom line. We have some experience with fiscal sponsorships already. Quite a few cool, very very cool groups actually. People I really really like. World Heritage User Group. They're based in France and Morocco. So in their case, we paid for Facebook ads, for a website design, I believe, and now they have a project manager or two. There may be an app that can be used for GLAMs, so keep your eyes peeled if you're interested in working with GLAMs, because there will be some very, very cool product coming out of them. Wikimedians of Arusha, they're running a bunch of editathons and train the trainers. So we help them through that. A much smaller project, which was the Arabic Wiki Days, but it worked as well. We paid for graphic design, I believe. West Bengal User Group vouchers for a contest. It was Wiki Loves. Oh no, that's the Wiki Loves Women South Asia, where we paid for vouchers. And West Bengal, we're paying computer, travel, transport, editathons, and all those things. As you can see, there's a whole range of activities. Again, the bottom line is that we're there to cover you back. You do your project, and we're behind. And this is the end of my talk already. It's a lightning talk, and for a reason. Again, if you want to contact me afterwards, feel free to reach out, stefan@kiwix.org, or find me through the website, or find me on Meta. No problem. I'm going back to my camera. I hope you can see me. I can see some of you. Hello. And I'll try to read the questions. So I have a very small screen. Oops. Am I the only one not seeing any presentation happening? No, it wasn't. Okay, well, it is now on. And there's an Etherpad. I forgot to mention that one. And Alex. Hello, Alex. Long time no see. And yes, as Mike Peel says, there are other fiscal sponsors available. Kiwix is just one of them. Speak with the Wikimedia Foundation. They know all of us. They probably will know which one is better for your region or country. Because I'm based in Switzerland, so I kind of think I'm the center of the world, at least time zone wise. I can reach out to more or less everywhere. But there are groups that are based in Asia. There are groups that are based in South America. Try to speak with Janice at the Wikimedia Foundation. She would be the one to know. All the team is super helpful. They are great people. So really, feel free to ping them, ask questions. Do not be shy. The Wikimedia Foundation grant process is actually very well run. And I say this from experience and comparison with others. So ask questions to me if you want something informal, or directly to them. It will be okay. I see another thank you. Well, I thank you. And I will wait another few seconds to see if there are more questions. I actually have 2 minutes. So there will be 2 minutes of more questions, or I would just spend the time awkwardly dancing. And I cannot play elevator music, sadly, but I had a very good compilation, and we'll see. And I'm done. No dancing. I would actually appreciate if commenters would comment on my dancing abilities. It's kind of nice. I'm putting an effort here, people. All right, there's 50 seconds left. No other questions. I take it as a wrap. So thank you very much again. And I shall be waiting for your emails or your grant proposals. We speak a lot with the foundation, so there's always a big discussion. Thank you very much. I cannot read your name, Ezekiel. Thank you for. Okay, yeah. Well, next Wikimania there will be live sessions and we'll be dancing. You'll be my first dance, Ezekiel. Mark my words. All right, everyone. I don't know how to disconnect, so I'll just press on disconnect, and I'll wish you a great day and a great rest of Wikimania. Bye.
Hi, everyone. I was told that I would be able to share my screen on the left, and I was hoping someone could tell me where I press to share my screen. Um, uh, I do not see a share screen button, but I could send you my slides if you want, or I could just chat for 15 minutes. It's the top left in a drop. Oh, okay. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. I'll just go ahead right now. My name is Annie Rowerda. I run social media accounts called Depths of Wikipedia on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I'm very excited for this. This is my second Wikimania, and I've been to a few conferences, but this is my first time presenting. A little bit about me is that I recently graduated from the University of Michigan I studied neuroscience. This on the left is my assistant, and then right now I'm a freelance writer. One thing I wrote I actually am so glad I put this one as the example because I talked a little bit about keywords, which I believe the last session mentioned. This is my TikTok where I talk about some like goofy Wikipedia rabbit holes. TikTok actually has a feature where you can link to Wikipedia, so it's interesting to see how page views on Wikipedia are affected by a viral TikTok. I haven't done any scientific research. I just noticed. There's also the Instagram, which it's been 2 years about, and now it's 1 million followers. And then I've gotten a lot of press too. This was me in the New York Times, the New Yorker even did look at the little caricature of my cat that they did. I like that they made her blue. And then this is discussing live shows. I've done a few live comedy shows across the country, and I'm having fun, so I believe I'll do more. Where I have a slideshow, I talk about Wikipedia, I make some jokes. Sometimes I'll bring in some star Wikipedians. I had Andrew Lee, and I had Stephen Pruitt, the editor in English Wikipedia with the most edits, at a recent show, and that was exciting. More press. This is me on the news for some reason talking about odd rabbit holes on Wikipedia. Really what I'm saying is that this has struck a nerve with people, and so I'm really glad that people are getting excited about Wikipedia. This is just like a screen grab of some of the things that I posted on Instagram recently. Some favorites of mine include Blobject, which feels just so aptly named, a design product with an absence of sharp edges. I was also enamored by the fact that, well, this is the one on the bottom left. Albania has over 100,000 bunkers built during the Soviet era, and there's a note on the bottom that young people will go there and hang out. Some more samples of things that I think are charming on Wikipedia, and other people do too. This chimpanzee, which is probably not typing Hamlet, but hey, maybe. Who's to say? I posted this image of Jan Smit, a paleontologist he's really successful. He studies stratigraphy and like the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. Anyway, his Wikipedia photo to me was the funniest thing ever because, of course, he's looking at rocks. He's a paleontologist. 200,000 people on Twitter liked this image, and the next day I saw a response from Rob Crane, his son-in-law, saying that Jan Smit was looking at Jan Smit looking at rocks. Here's another fun corner of Wikipedia that I enjoy. The High Five page has featured these photos since about 2008, and you can kind of tell from the fashion here, like this is 2008. I tracked them down a few months ago, and I reached out to them, and I was very excited to discover that Victim Mrs. in the bottom left here, are you ready for my joke? Victim Mrs. became Victim Mrs. MRS. Ha ha ha. I was also delighted when they recreated the photos with their kids. They really committed. They're passing on their legacy here. So that's a heartwarming story. Another article that I think is really delightful and also timely. So 3 days ago was the 18th anniversary of Dave Matthews Band dumping 800 pounds of septic waste onto a passenger sightseeing boat on the Chicago River. I don't have a slide for it, but I posted about this. A lot of other people also posted about it, and the page views for this article are like they skyrocketed. Yeah. Wikipedia's got everything you need. There's 6.5 million English articles now, something like that. And sometimes it feels like there's an article for everything under the sun. The Pope Mobile, for example, John Paul II requested that the media stop referring to it as the Pope Mobile, saying it was undignified. The Pope Mobile, blah, 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 blah. I'll keep going through these pretty quickly since I don't have time. I don't have time for that one. Somebody sued God for his, quote, negligence in allowing a lightning bolt to strike her house. God failed to turn up in court, which really makes me wonder how omnipresent is that guy. But even though this woman won the case, it's unclear whether she was able to collect any of her winnings. This is the ugliest color in the world, according to a marketing panel. And now it's the color of cigarette packages in some places. This is the average color of the universe, found by a team of astronomers from Johns Hopkins University. The name cosmic latte perhaps speaks to the researchers' affinity for caffeine. I quite love this photo of a Wikipedia editor on the internet. Nobody knows you're a dog. And I'm curious to see if I meet any dog editors at Wikimania. I don't really have time for that one. The cat gap is a period in the fossil record. It's, about 600, or excuse me, I can't do math right now, 6.5 million years where there are few fossils of cats in North America. Where did they go? Maybe they found a little sunny spot by the window. What I think about humor on Wikipedia is that obviously Wikipedia is not here to be a joke box. I would never advocate for vandalism. I don't think Wikipedia is a place to purposely put in your jokes. That said, little moments of goofiness occasionally here and there within reason, I think they do show people that Wikipedia was written by humans, and not even that, it was written by people just like them. Here's a great quote I read in the Signpost recently, but I'm going to move on. I have it's about 2 million followers at this point, and I think they would consider themselves Wikipedia enthusiasts, but few are Wikipedia editors. So it's a fun challenge to think about how I can tap into that base of people who are mostly young people and get them to try editing. So I've done some editathons. I've talked more about editing. I'm an editor. I have a Discord where there's more low stakes conversational ways to talk about editing. I've also pointed to the Wikipedia Discord, which is amazing. It's great. I'm open to suggestions. Many of you probably have projects. I have a platform. Let's work together. My email's at the end of the presentation. Here's one example of me talking about the people behind Wikipedia. I said that I was obsessed with the person who forgot their frozen pizza in the oven for 4 hours and then took a photo of its charred remains for the article Pyrolysis, because the image description charmed me a little bit. So I'm so sorry to user slick about your pizza, but thanks for the great photo. There's some memes about Wikipedia that perhaps will intrigue a non-Wikipedian. This one's from There's No Time, and if you know this meme, you'll get it. If you don't, you might not. But it's all acronyms, and then instead of saying always has been, it's Wikipedia AHB. People on the internet, I think, have lots to say about Wikipedia, and of course there are some Fox News corners where it's very critical of Wikipedia still. But there's also this massive group of young people who love Wikipedia and who love reading Wikipedia and who would probably be great editors. And so again, I try to introduce them to editing. I would love your suggestions. I would love your help. So that's about it. I hope that I'm good on time, and I hope that the rest of your Wikimania is just as happy as this lake of meteoric origin. So with that, feel free to email me. You can DM me. I'm pretty easy to reach on the internet, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. You can ask questions. I believe I can see the chat. Oh, okay. What is the most fun non-English article you have come across? Oh, that's a tough one. So I speak some Spanish, but not great. But I recently read the article about the song Bebito Fiu Fiu, which this is a little bit naughty, but the Peruvian president had a scandal where he he had an affair, and there's a song where they set the exposed texts to music, and it went viral. And I read that. It's in the Spanish language Wikipedia. Bebito Fiu Fiu. I would love to see more of the chat questions, but I think that some of them have scrolled up. So it's fun to see some familiar names, though. Hi, Dan. Hi, Rebecca. If you asked a question before and you're curious, maybe send it again because I'm not seeing very many. Otherwise, I can call it. Oh, French articles. Okay, so I did recently post about how the French article for crepe defines it as a thin pancake, and the English article for pancake defines it as, or excuse me, the English article crepe defines it as a thin pancake. The French article for pancake describes it as a thick crepe. And so it's this fun circular situation where it's pancakes and crepes all the way down. Hi, Vera. Somebody just said that I have more followers than the Wikipedia account. Yeah, more on Instagram, but on Twitter, we're really close right now. I'm not very sure. I think the Wikipedia account is great for like today. They do really good today in history type posts, which I always think are useful and helpful and interesting. Whoever is in charge of this, if you would like to kick me out at any time, you may definitely kick me out. But for now, I'll keep answering. Has anyone ever offered to buy my followers? All the time. I get a lot of spammers that may or may not be serious that offer to buy it, but I will not sell out, at least at least not to somebody like that. How do I find interesting articles? There are so many. Well, I do quite like editing, but even when you're editing, you don't always find. Sometimes you can get kind of pigeonholed into one area for a while. I browse quite a bit. I really like fun facts in that corner of the internet, like on Reddit and newsletters. And then at this point, there's so many followers that I get DMs all the time from very wonderful people who say, "Hey, Annie, you would love this article." And then I click on it and I read it and I often post it. So that is probably how it goes. How much time do I spend going into rabbit holes? Well, in early quarantine, when I lost my job, much more time. But right now that I'm working more, maybe I probably spend like 2 hours a day on Wikipedia when you add up editing and just browsing. Thanks so much for joining. Somebody is saying something about spoken Wikipedia on the Dutch Wikipedia, and I would love to check that out because I don't often listen to those recordings. Bebito Fiu Fiu does need an English article.
all to the Universal Code of Conduct Enforcement Guidelines Roundtable. My name is Sally, and my pronouns are she and her. And I've had the pleasure of working alongside the Enforcement Drafting Committee for the last little while. And I would love to take a moment to introduce you all to your panelists for today. So if we could go through the room, and if you could introduce yourself, your pronouns, and how you were involved with Wikimedia and the UCOC. Could we please start off with Ruby?
Hi, from Ghana. My
And I think we might be having a little bit of technical difficulties with Ruby's connection at the moment. So we'll just pause there for a second. And maybe if we can skip to Barkeep, if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll jump back to Ruby.
Sure. Hi. I am an editor who goes by Barkeep or Addison Bryant. My pronouns are he, him. I primarily edit English Wikipedia, where I serve as an administrator, and I'm currently on the English Wikipedia Arbitration Committee. And I am excited to be on the UCC Enforcement Guidelines Drafting Committee, and now the Revision Committee.
Thank you so much, Barkeep. I'm going to pass it off to MJL next. And I think we may have some connection issues with MJL as well. Ray, would you be able to go next?
Sure, hello, cool. I am Ray, I don't use the name Vermont. I am a steward, admin, check user on 2 projects, and I also work on the movement communications team. I am part of the revisions committee, and I was part of the phase 2 drafting committee as well. And I use they, them pronouns.
Thank you so much, Vermont. We're going to try to jump back to Ruby at this moment. And perhaps it could just be myself. Patrick, are you able to hear Ruby?
No, I think Ruby must be having some connection issues.
Okay, and maybe we could try back MJL if you're able to introduce yourself.
MJL is disconnected and is currently waiting to be let back in.
Yeah, it looks like Ruby and MJL are having some issues with connection here, so we'll hopefully introduce them when they're back.
Alrighty.
So Sally, I could jump in and do my short history of UCOC here, if you'd like.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much, Patrick.
Yeah. So Gretchen, if you don't mind just putting the slides back to slide 4 there. So yeah, I think that most folks are at least aware of the term UCOC. They've probably seen it show up in different places, but I think there's probably some viewers who haven't heard about the UCOC at all. And so we'd like to just do a quick history of UCOC, and then we can go back to our panelists for questions. So the origins of UCOC were really from the movement strategy process. So we've probably some of you participated in that process maybe, but it took place 2016 to 2018. And really talked to Wikimedians around the world to try and see what progress they'd like to see the movement make in the next 10 to 15 years. And one of the recommendations was to create a code of conduct. And the specific recommendation was create a code of conduct in collaboration with communities to provide a universal baseline of acceptable behavior in the entire movement. Gretchen, are you able to advance the slides for me? Apologies to the viewers. We'll go back a few there, Gretchen. Back again. Sorry, folks. There we go. Thank you very much. Next slide, please, Gretchen. So after that recommendation came out, it was really a matter of sort of trying to talk to communities about what their priorities might be for a universal code of conduct. 19 different communities took place in some initial conversations in their own languages on their own wikis, talking about what they'd love to see from a code of conduct and what they really didn't want to see from a code of conduct. From there, we put together the first drafting committee, and we had folks from around the movement from different roles come in and start throwing around ideas and creating a first draft. We had the community review that first draft, a lot of really, really good constructive input, and the drafting committee was able to make some revisions. From there, we asked the board to consider this code of conduct, and they were quite happy with it and decided to ratify it, and that was last year in 2021. Next slide, please, Gretchen. I think most of you who have been involved in policies, either enforcing them or writing them, know that a good policy isn't quite enough. You do need to have some guidance for the people using the policy about how it should be enforced. And in our movement, we have many different conduct policies across our projects, hundreds of different policies. We have very different ways of enforcing policy in our communities, from very large established systems in large Wikipedias to more informal, more social systems in some of our smaller Wikipedias. So it's important to try and write some guidelines to help our communities mesh together some of those practices in a way that works for the UCOC. So many more consultations, surveys, discussions with communities. We had a second drafting committee come up with some enforcement guidelines. And again, we brought a draft in front of the community, and the community had a lot of different feedback on it. The committee then made some more revisions, and we had a full community vote on the guidelines. Next slide, please. So we had a fairly good participation in the vote. It was about 56–57% people supporting, about 40–41% of people opposing. The vote also allowed people to give some comments about what they liked or didn't like about these enforcement guidelines. So after reviewing these comments and the vote, the Board of Trustees saw that there were some areas of concern in these enforcement guidelines. So they asked a revisions committee to be put in place to hopefully make some changes and improvements to these areas of concern. Next slide, please, Gretchen. So here's a timeline that we're in the middle of right now. The revisions committee is working on some areas of the guidelines to try and make some changes and some improvements. There's also been a readability and translatability review of a document. That was one of the pieces of feedback that the committee got. I'm just going to outline some areas, specific areas that the committee has been looking at. One aspect is training around the UCOC, how it should work, who should provide it, whether it should be mandatory or not for certain groups. These are concerns that community members had. Next slide, please. Another one was trying to make sure that people are aware of the policy and how they should sort of agree to it. And so this is called affirmation. And so the committee is looking at some of the challenges around affirmation. Right now, we don't have sort of formal acceptance of policies in our movement. And so with the exception of the terms of use, of course. And so the committee is trying to navigate some ways to increase awareness of the UCOC without making it a divisive issue. Next slide, please. Another area is when cases are reported about violations or potential violations of the UCOC, it's quite difficult to strike a balance between protecting the confidentiality of a person who's making a report and keeping the person who has been reported informed or let them know about what's happening with the process. So the revisions committee is really spending some time trying to figure out that aspect in a way that works within our movements, within the limitations of a volunteer system, but also provides some fairness in the process. Next slide, please. So the revisions committee is hard at work right now, and they will be presenting their new revisions to the enforcement guidelines in September. And so we'll definitely be letting everyone know about that review in the beginning of September. And we'd love to have folks drop by, give their opinions on some of the changes. The committee will be again going back to incorporate feedback they get from this process. So we'd love to hear whether people like the changes, don't like the changes, or would like to see something different. And so we'd love to see you all in September. But I'm going to stop taking up all the time of the committee here. And I'm going to give things back to Sally to open things up for questions. So I see a lot of folks in the chat. Please drop your questions in there. We'll get them in the queue. We've got a few pre-submitted questions we're going to start with. But yeah, we'd love to see any questions you have in the queue, and we'll get them into the mix here.
Sorry, Ruby has indicated that she's trying to get back in, and so I don't know if there's someone technically who can help her rejoin the room.
Very good. Gretchen will hopefully help Ruby get in. But I'll give things back over to Sally.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. We'll get started with some of the questions here. And as folks join us, we'll be sure to let them introduce themselves. Oh, we have Ruby back. Ruby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Would you be able to introduce yourself in a quick 30 seconds, perhaps?
Yeah, my name is Ruby Demichi Brown. So I'm from Ghana. My pronouns are she and her. I'm part of the Open Foundation West Africa community, and I'm happy to be so committee with drafting law enforcement guidelines and revision. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ruby. And we'll get started. We'll jump into our questions. And MJ, we will give you a chance to introduce yourself when we get to you. And one of the first questions is, what are some interesting things you have learned about policy enforcement in Wikimedia communities as part of working on the committee? And I'd love to start off by hearing what you think of that, Ruby.
Et donc, le comité de révision est en train de travailler à présent. Ils vont donc présenter une nouvelle version des directives d'application au mois de septembre, début septembre.
From across the world, athletes, groups, individuals.
On est ravis de pouvoir
This is not to say
partager nos
that
avis,
these
d'entendre nos
communities don't already have
et de savoir si les personnes apprécient les
what
changements ou bien
have been
si ces personnes n'aiment pas les changements.
was the absence of
Donc, on
universal
va
code of conduct.
échanger nos avis au mois de
The community
septembre.
mentioned during the movement
Et
strategy 2030.
maintenant,
And so now we
je
have
repasse la
some
parole
sort of
à
universal
Sally s'il
code
y a
of
des
conduct.
questions. Je
I
vois
mean,
qu'il y a des
subject to
questions
continuous
sur
improvement as the years go
la
by.
messagerie. Vous
And
pouvez
it's
les
not
écrire
enough to
aussi
just
à
have a universal code of conduct. We need an enforcement guidelines, and which is what I've been part of this committee helping to draft this enforcement guidelines. And being a member of this committee, I've learned so much, and I see why it's relevant for us to have such an universal code of conduct that all of us can make use of. And one interesting thing about this policy is the fact that the committee itself is made up of different representative of people, and that includes WMS staff, volunteers from different regions, and individuals from minority groups, bringing that kind of diversity of views and perspective when we deliberating on issues. And that is the whole beauty of this committee, because we have that kind of diversified understanding in dealing with some of these issues, or helping to understand and digest some of these community feedbacks that we get whenever we reach out to the community. Um, this makes the policy very intriguing and helps us to deliberate and examine issues from different perspectives. Another interesting thing that I think I've learned from this policy was that we didn't do it in isolation of the community itself. We, from every stage of the drafting, we engage the community, we digest their feedback, and we see how we are able to incorporate these feedbacks into drafting this policy. And so this is one of the things. These are some of the things that intrigues me about being a member of this committee. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ruby. And yes, I really hear what you're saying about the diverse opinions being brought towards not only from the community, but also the members of the committee. Thank you so much for sharing some of those insights there. Barkeep, I would love to hear some of your thoughts to that question. And please let me know if you'd like me to repeat it.
No, that's quite all right. I think something that I'm not sure I would say I have learned, because I knew it, but I've learned a lot of the specifics of just how both how similar enforcement is in a lot of ways across the movement, that a lot of policy is very similar. There might be small differences in details across the movement, but policy itself and guidelines and how we kind of handle UCOC is largely the same. There are some notable differences in that, but pretty similar. But even with kind of similar wording, the way communities actually implement and practice that can be fairly different. That there's that they at least a fairly different outcomes, and so that has been an interesting piece to me. And I would say, kind of I did not know much about how affiliates have handled kind of their UCOC type enforcement pieces, and so that has been a really interesting piece for me to learn through this process, because we do have at least we have a couple of people, Ruby and another member, who are both members of affiliates and can speak to that experience.
Thank you, Barkeep. And would also love to hear from MJL. Are you connected at the moment?
I believe so.
Awesome. Would you also be able to quickly introduce yourself before we jump into your answer?
Yes, my name is MJL, pronouns they, them. I am a editor on English Wikipedia, and I do YouTube as well on the side. And Sally, could you please repeat the question for me, because it's been a while since I want to make sure I answer it right.
Of course. What are some interesting things you have learned about policy enforcement in Wikimedia communities as part of working on the committee?
I definitely have learned that going into it, I understood that everybody has different opinions about policy enforcement. But being on the committee, I learned that people really have different opinions about policy enforcement. Which I learned that it's been a very interesting hearing the community's perspective on a lot of different things. So that's definitely been probably the most interesting, because I thought I understood the community's position on policy enforcement pretty well, but honestly, no, and it's been a humbling experience.
Thank you, MJL, for sharing your insights there. We're going to jump into our second question, which is, what kinds of changes have you been working on during the revision process? And I'd love to start off by hearing some of your experiences there, Vermont.
Sure, yeah. So we had, as many people remember, that vote and the rather large consultation period and a lot of feedback that we have. Basically, all of the changes we've been making has been towards the areas that were highlighted by community discussion in the consultation period. Been working to address concerns and also to update the document with other plans that we had. It was not a finished document; it was a draft, and that includes, as I think some people have asked about in the comments here, the information on affirmation and training. We put a lot of effort into those weeks of just talking about affirmation and training and making sure that we get it right. Yeah.
Thank you, Vermont. And Barkeep, do you have some thoughts to add on that? What are some of the changes you have been working on during the revision process?
Yeah, for me, I think Rosie's email was or Rosie's statement was a great kind of charge for us, and I really appreciated the board saying. We appreciate that 58% of the participants liked this, but we really hear the concerns of that other 41, 42% and want to see if we can't do better. And so I think there have been some easy fixes, such as around training, where I mean, we had some changes to make, but they were fairly easy for us to hammer out. I think that we have had some more difficult pieces, such as balancing the rights of people who are being harassed with the kind of more general right to understand what you're being accused of, and so that is a tricky piece, and so I would say that's there. Something that we have started to do, but I think we have a lot more work to do, and so and looking forward to community feedback to help us do this is, I think, kind of in the organizational part and on making it easier to read and easier to translate, I think, and just easier to understand, because we saw during the initial feedback that committee members had one understanding, but of certain pieces of text, but that the community fairly consistently read something in a different light. And so I think we have some more opportunities to fix those areas as we kind of get some community feedback and continue our work after in the kind of second phase of the revisions.
Thank you, Barkeep, and really appreciate that insight about what you've been working on in this revision process. Ruby, do you have some other perspective to add?
I think he said it all. I think basically what we've been doing is trying to fix some of these issues, fixing the wording, making sure that the phrases, like the sentences, have that clarity uh, in it. So basically, these are some of the things, and how we're incorporating community feedback into the text that we drafted. Yeah, basically, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. We're going to jump to a question from the audience here, and we can maybe start off with MJL. The question is, beside the board's decision, what are some things that you personally or the committee felt needed to improve? MJL?
I definitely thought the training aspect, the training and the affirmations were probably going into it. I understood could have been a lot better and had a lot more improvements. So I was honestly kind of excited when the board made that statement, because I was like, okay, I'm really glad we can tackle this again, because we had a lot of good feedback about that, and it was definitely clear that the committee's intentions, which were one thing, versus what we ended up releasing, didn't exactly line up. And so having the ability to actually make it more clear to our original vision was something I was really excited about.
Thanks so much, and would love to also hear from Vermont. And please let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot that we have worked on improving. And unfortunately, one of the things about doing a big community consultation about a 15-page document is that there are areas of the document that need improvement that don't get much attention because people are only focused on the big stuff, like affirmation, training, and right to be heard. We have done a lot of other changes. We've fixed wording, we've clarified things, we have... what else is there? We've talked about like how we handle different types of cases, how existing enforcement structures handle them, and how we want to write our recommendations in line with that. Yeah.
Thank you, folks. Okay, we'll jump back into some of these questions here. What are some differences in community practices between different projects that you have observed? I would love to start off with Barkeep and hear your thoughts on that.
I think that different communities have pretty different levels of so I think different communities have different levels of kind of community involvement in enforcement, and so some of our larger wikis will have multiple places that enforcement will happen, where some of our wikis have an arbitration committee that our NGL, I think you might want to mute there. So some of our communities have arbitration committees, as I indicated, but even arbitration committees can have different roles there. And then I think the tolerance for or ability to have kind of private complaints is also a major difference that I see across the movement, and I'll kind of stop there.
Thank you. Apologies for that, Barkeep. I think we missed the last part with some feedback there. Are you able to just mention the last part that you were speaking to?
The private, the ability to kind of hear complaints privately at any level, and how much ability and or community policy support there is for kind of private complaints is something that is very different across our movement.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to jump into another question from the audience, which is, how does the committee mitigate possible Anglocentrism in the worldview and process? For example, today's expectation for everybody to state their pronouns is incredibly Anglocentric, also posted on movementstrategy.org. Would love to start off by hearing your thoughts on that, Ruby.
This is a really hard one. Can someone take the lead on that?
For sure. Barkeep, would you be able to answer some of this question?
I am quite sympathetic to the complaints here, right? That we have 3 of our 4 panel members here are in the United States, and so that is certainly a concern. We do have members from other continents, right? So besides Ruby, we do have people that are living, working part of communities that are outside of the Anglo world. We have also been reaching out to groups inside the Wikimedia Foundation, as the Wikimedia Foundation has really kind of expanded their workforce to make sure that it is not so Anglocentric, to get some feedback on that. In terms of the pronouns, that is tricky, right? Because I would say the first phase I would say the enforcement has had a slightly, as a percentage, has had slightly more Anglo-centric contributors there. The first phase, where things like where a lot of the kind of gender and pronoun pieces came out, did kind of come out of that piece. And so I think that is an interesting part and something for the movement to continue to talk about. And I hope there's a really robust discussion about that when we kind of reach let's take a look at the UCOC as a whole, and see what revisions need to be made, which the board has indicated. I think there's definitely a lot of work that can be done, and I'm hopeful that after we see the UCOC in action for a little bit, we will be able to evaluate that and see what parts are working and which parts need to be adjusted to be more culturally sensitive for the entire movement.
Thank you, Barkeep. And would also love to hear from Patrick on this question.
Hi. Yeah, I guess I didn't even introduce myself at the beginning of this. I'm really sorry, folks. My name is Patrick Gurley. I'm a lead project manager, policy manager with the Trust and Safety team, and I've been working closely with UCOC for a while. But I do want to mention that this is definitely one of the concerns that definitely the Board of Trustees pointed out, is that, you know, it's not just sort of this specific area of pronouns and gender, but that the whole document for the enforcement guidelines was difficult to translate into some languages. It had some idioms and some structures that did not translate very well. And readability in general could be improved as well. And I don't want to criticize our committee members when I say this, but, you know, it is hard to write a document that is universally translatable, perhaps, you know, almost impossible. But we have been trying to support the committee in having some of our more experienced translators at the foundation take a look at the document and review it. We've also had folks with academic experience and education on the general concept of translatability take a look at the document and make some suggestions. So it's a difficult one. I mean, I think to get a document that is, you know, universal, as in the title of the Universal Code of Conduct, is a challenge and probably an aspirational goal. But we have to try to get close to it. And sorry if I've insulted committee members by saying their work was not readable. It was definitely readable, but it could see some improvements.
Thank you, Patrick. And we're going to answer another question from the audience. It is, how are small wiki projects represented in taking decisions in the UCOC? Vermont, are you able to start us off with that question?
Sorry, what was that question?
How are small wiki projects represented in taking decisions in the UCOC?
In taking decisions. Well, the difficulty here is that we are writing, or rather rewriting, the enforcement guidelines for the Universal Code of Conduct. This is the revisions committee. We have not written the Universal Code of Conduct. We have written the enforcement guidelines. One of the things that we have definitely focused on is how can we best integrate the benefits of the UCOC with existing enforcement structures. So, like, how do we create a functional document without accidentally destroying the way that projects do things? And what we have is people from a bunch of different language projects. We have someone from the affiliations committee. We have someone from ARBCom. We have me. I'm a steward. We have someone who's a bunch of people who have these very varied experiences. Yes, we have 3 people in the US, but all of them have very different histories and enforcement processes and very different understandings of them. We don't have any small wiki admins, but we do have who are people who are familiar with both small and large wiki processes, and we've been able to, I believe at least, write a document that supports them without disturbing the way they engage with their workflows.
Thank you. Appreciate your perspective on that one. And we'll head back into the questions here. In what was the most difficult topic area you faced when working on the guidelines? And would love to hear from all of the panelists on this question. What was the most difficult topic area you faced when working on the guidelines? Ruby, can we start with you?
Sure. This is very interesting. I mean, we've had difficult instances where we've dealt with it, but one of the most difficult phases that I think for me we felt was when we're dealing with some real cases and seeing how these cases will be dealt with in real life. And deliberating on these cases, some of the thoughts that came into mind was how can we ensure that third party reporters or victims are protected while reporting cases, especially when the case has a potential of putting people at risk when reported or putting the victim at risk. We also like how do we deal with a third person reporting a case when the parties involved they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. For instance, we have two individuals on Wiki abusing themselves or using abusive words, throwing some chats on their top pages and all that. And these two individuals don't see anything wrong with the kind or the choice of words that they're using. And this is a case, and this case is reported by a third party who sees everything wrong with this. So dealing with this issue, it becomes very complex and very cumbersome because I mean, we in different we the wiki space is made up of different communities. What might look like an insult to one community can be a greeting for another community. So how do we even differentiate that? So dealing with some of these cases or drafting guidelines for some of these cases become very complex. And another instance is how to deal with vandals. Of course, there are many things that we cannot avoid. How do we stop people from vandalizing or abusing this reporting opportunity that we've made for community members? We also want to ensure that staff and volunteer time are not wasted in handling things that are not even real in the first place. So this is also like some of the difficulty that we foresee. And these cases may look very simple when dealing with, or maybe when you read about it, it looks very simple. But when you bring it into real life, like practically, what steps are we going to deal? What steps are we going to take in dealing with these issues? We realize the complexity of it. And so this is like some of the things that I identified as kind of like a very tricky and difficult area. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruby. I really appreciate you bringing contextually how every case can definitely look different in different parts of the world. Thank you so much. We would love to hear from all the panelists on this question. MJL, what was the most difficult topic area you faced when working on the guidelines?
Uh, the right to be heard definitely for me was that was a lot of difficult stuff because I felt like the community was asking us to solve some problems that were extremely complicated and that the community itself didn't have answers to. So I was more than happy to receive feedback about it. We're still ironing out a lot of the kinks with the right to be heard. I can't. It's definitely dwarfed anything else that we've worked on, even during the first go around of drafting. I can't because I know we had a lot of contentious things that we had to work out in the first round. But the revisions committee with the right to be heard is definitely it's definitely been a very, 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 very complicated process and contentious.
Thank you. And we'll go next Vermont and then Barkeep. Vermont, what was the most difficult topic area you faced when working on the guidelines?
Honestly, this would be the training bit. We put a lot of effort into training. There was a lot of discussion over... What's the good wording for this? We had a lot of talks about the specific content that we wanted involved in training and the level of specificity we wanted to give to that content. Because at the same time, we're kind of rebuilding the U4C policy and how the U4C building committee is going to look, and they're going to be the ones who actually make the training. And there was a lot of discussions over, okay, what is the training for? Are we doing levels? Are we doing modules? Who are we recommending take which trainings? It was all really helpful. So, yeah.
Thank you, Vermont. And Barkeep, would love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I think MJL is correct that the balancing of rights is one of the trickiest things. But for me, my answers would go back to the phase one pieces. I think the two pieces that I would like to identify that have been hardest for me were first, kind of making sure that enforcement processes that are happening across the movement or for universal code of conduct like behavior, even if it wasn't labeled UCOC enforcement, right? A lot of projects are already actively enforcing these areas, and let's make sure that nothing we do will stop that work from happening, right? That we are not going to undermine local processes. And this goes back to the question of how do we counter Anglo-centrism. We need, right, so an important principle that one of our members introduced was the kind of I can't remember the English phrase, and she talks about it in French, but is basically the idea that that enforcement should happen at the most local level possible in most circumstances. And so kind of respecting that idea and making sure that played out throughout the document was super hard. And then I would say everything around the Universal Code of Conduct Coordinating Committee, commonly known as the U4C, was incredibly hard. And it was so hard that essentially towards the end of the process, the committee threw up its hands and said, this is so hard that we need to have a whole separate group that is going to do this themselves after we're done with our work. And I think that reflects just how hard and complicated and involved what is going to be.
Thanks, Barkeep. We're going to pass it off to another audience question here, and perhaps we could start with MJL. And it is, in what areas do you or committee think community input is lacking?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of I think I actually don't know, because it's been, in general, like most of I would have loved to see more community input on pretty much everything. Like, that's, for me, it's like I feel like it's been the community's been very disengaged with the process, despite it probably being one of the more important things happening in the Wikimedia movement at the moment. There's definitely, from the technical code of conduct and and their committee, I would have loved to see more media wiki developers, weigh in. That's definitely, I feel like we haven't gotten a lot of feedback on how the technical code of conduct is going to interface with the UCOC. And I feel like that's probably one of the, I would love to see more, feedback from folks covered by that.
Thank you. And would love to open that space up to other folks on who are panelists here. In what areas do you or committee think community input is lacking? Are there any other thoughts? Please feel free to speak openly right now, and I can then move on to another question after. Yes, Barky, please.
I have a thought. I think it's a really hard piece, because I think we want to provide lots of opportunities for community feedback, but I am hearing from multiple communities that they are feeling burned out from the amount of feedback. And so I think we're just having to walk a tough line, because we genuinely want community feedback, but we also want to respect that people are feeling like, boy, haven't I already done that? And I think especially that, there were lots of people who were talking about the needs, the need to kind of balance rights between people in the first phase, and that feedback wasn't listened to until it kind of came out through the comments of the ratification process. I mean, it was listened to. That's not quite fair, but it wasn't acted on in a way that really felt good until the board statement. And so just kind of want to recognize that complexity for the community there.
Thank you, Barkeep. Were there any last panelists that would like to speak to that question before we move on? Awesome. Thank you so much. So I do see that we are nearing time here, and would love to pass it back to Patrick pass it back to Patrick.
Yeah, I'll just close out, but I think I just got a message from Vermont who actually had something to add on the Anglo-centric aspect. Vermont, do you want to hop in and just make a comment there?
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think either MJL or I had the opportunity to respond to the Anglo-centric and pronouns-related comment. I understand that there is a large issue with Anglocentrism in the way that we have formed a lot of people who are based in the US. We do have a lot of people who are not based in the US, but the issue stands. There is a balance to be made in every foundation-related committee between experiential diversity and geographic diversity. I feel like we have definitely hit the experiential aspect, but we have not exactly hit the geographic aspect. What I will also say is that the idea that respecting people's pronouns and how they want other people to refer to them is Anglocentric. That idea is patently unacceptable in the Wikimedia movement and not something that I'm going to address seriously, because we have very clear history of maintaining a degree of tolerance and acceptance of other people's identities independent of people's foundational cultural beliefs. And on Wikimedia projects, you have the right to be respected for how you want other people to refer to you as. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Vermont. Yeah, it's definitely an issue that is something that our communities are struggling with as well, and I'm glad that we have a committee that is willing to tackle that issue. It is incredibly difficult. I'm going to close out our presentation today. I want to really thank Ruby, MJL, Barkeep, and Vermont for joining today. They've put in tremendous amounts of work with their other fellow committee members, and to do this presentation was something extra, but they thought it was quite important, and I agree it is important to help Wikimania attendees understand where we are with the process. We saw a question earlier on about, how can I give some feedback on these upcoming revisions? And I just want to remind folks that we are having a community review of the revisions in the month of September. We have tentatively put September 7th as the opening date. Just be aware we might have to shift that, but it looks like we should be good to go on September 7th. We will be working with our movement strategy and governance team to make sure that we get as much messaging out about that consultation as possible, so that everyone knows how to take part. Again, if you have something that you really think you want on the table, there's many ways to reach out to the team, but we'll definitely communicate through on Wiki, social media, the new movement strategy forum as well, and we'll do as much as we can to make sure that everyone has both the information they need to take part, but ability to take part in different ways. So we're hoping to have some conversation hours so people can take part verbally, as well as on Wiki consultations and gathering information through other channels. So we're trying to make this as accessible as possible. I see my little counter is getting down to 15 seconds. So again, I just want to thank all of our Wikimania attendees for coming. Policy can be a dry topic, but we saw some great engagement and great ideas, great questions. And so I'll just wish everyone happy Thursday. And I believe this is one of the last sessions of the day. So if you're tired, get off the computer, go for a walk, and have a wonderful day.